So welcome everyone to the St. Patrick's Day edition of the Power BI Meetup from Vancouver. I'm super excited here. This is actually a big day for me, and I'll sort of talk to you about that as we go and introduce the speakers. But we've got Cristian Angyal is with us from Romania for dealing with the magic of self-joins using Power Query in the real world. Of course, after Joseph does the What's New in Power BI for this month. As always, I just want to throw out a big shout out to the sponsors that make this event possible. SkillWave, of course, being my company, where we host some awesome Excel and Power BI training with Power Query and DAX and all kinds of good stuff there. If you want to learn how to do some of the stuff that Joseph's showing you, that Cristian's showing you, you should definitely check out our course catalog at skillwave.training. I also want to throw a quick acknowledgement out to my Monkey Tools software. If you are building models in Excel, you should definitely check out Monkey Tools. It'll help you build better models faster and also help you audit them as well. Our next meetup that will be coming up in a couple of weeks, again, is going to be an early start. We've got Mark Proctor is going to be joining us from the UK. He's going to be talking about automating the last 20%, why VBA is still an important technology in the stack, even though we're getting new things like Power Automate and new macro languages in Excel. And then to follow on with that, our next meetup that we're having for the Power BI track will be Thursday, April 21st. We've got Ed Hansbury is coming back. Really looking forward to this. And he's going to be talking about one of those automation technologies, Power Automate, showing you how to increase your productivity with Power BI. One of the things that I saw in Ed's write-up on this one here was something about being able to have a button right on your page to refresh your report when you're in Power BI. So some useful tips and stuff like that that are coming up. And both of these, I believe, should be open for RSVPs now. I'm just going to go and make sure that I got that published as soon as Joseph starts taking on his part, just to make sure I'm not lying. I just want to throw out also a note that we are now currently accepting registrations for the next semester of my self-service business intelligence bootcamp. I've got a few alumni that are actually on the call with us here today learning new stuff, but if you're interested in learning about Excel and Power Query, Power Pivot, Power BI, and how to use all these technologies together to really build complex and useful solutions here, as well as the ability to get a lot of material online to review for a year at a time, have access to Ask Me Anything sessions and things like that, where you can actually bring up your own questions. This is the program that you want to look at. It is actually even on sale, $200 off if you register before the end of March, and the next semester will kick off on April 19th. Really looking forward to get into another semester of this. So it was a really good time and really interesting. Again, the home for all of our VanPUG Meetup recordings is now on SkillWave's YouTube channel. I will throw the link for this one into the chat once I am done speaking here, but we've got all kinds of good content there. As a matter of fact, Matt and I just hosted our second, what is now going to be a monthly process of an Ask Me Anything session live at SkillWave, which was completely free. That was actually on our YouTube channel yesterday, so if you want to check out our YouTube channel, you can actually sign up for notifications of when we're going to be doing the next one, which is about a month away. Of course, on that YouTube channel as well, we've got Monkey Shorts. I think we're up to about 11 editions published of Monkey Shorts now, 3 minutes or less of technical content of cool stuff around Excel and Power Query and Power BI, totally free. Getting lots of good comments back on this one here. So if you're looking for some quick tips on a weekly basis on how to do things, you should check that out as well. The last thing that I'm going to throw out to close out my deck here is that we are always looking for speakers to speak at VanPUG. If you have cool things that you were doing with Excel or Power BI and would like a platform to share those with people, we would love to have you. I will drop this link into the chat a little bit later. Please fill out the survey. Let us know that you're interested, and we will get in touch with you and get you onto our platform. It's a great place to share stuff. People love it, and we've got a great crew here that really enjoys all the content that actually happens there. Oh, and look at that. Got a beautiful little comment there about loving Monkey Shorts. I love that. Awesome. Now, that's the extent of my deck for today. So I'm going to drop my slides here, and Joseph, I'm going to let you take over the sharing side of it here. But before we dive into this, I actually want to say that this is actually a really cool evening for me, because this is the very first time that both the speakers, both Joseph and Cristian, are actually former students of mine. And I'm not going to say that I can nearly take credit for all the stuff they do, because that would be a total lie. But I first met Joseph at one of my Power BI boot camps in Vancouver when he was getting started with Power BI. I first met Cristian in Bulgaria when he came to one of my self-service BI courses and whatnot. And since then, I've seen Cristian, man, everywhere. He comes to all kinds of my stuff. But this is a pretty cool thing for me to even know that I've had a hand in a small part in the journey that both of these guys are actually doing here. And I know Cristian's starting speaking on things. Joseph has now got a job where he's actually, well, working for my competition in a way. But that's cool stuff too, right? I mean, you know, it's just great to see that people are actually taking this to heart and really going with it. I couldn't be prouder to call both these guys my friends. So, Joseph, the floor is yours. I'm really looking forward to what you have, because I know that the Power BI build for this month dropped about 3.5 hours ago. So Joseph had a heck of a job to try and come up with material on short notice to present here, because of course it's an early day today too. So, so what do you got for us, bud?
Totally. Well, let's jump into it. So I think just before I jump into the what's new in Power BI as of 3.5 hours ago, just want to do a little bit of housekeeping, just introduce myself, but yeah, say thank you to Ken as well, because I know he messaged me a while ago saying he was really looking forward to this month, not just for the what's new, but because I know he gets to see his kind of student tree grow, and seeing me and Cristian doing this is kind of cool. So yeah, you definitely played more than a small part. So thank you, Ken, for everything that you do for the community, but also for your students as well. So with me, my name's Joseph. I've presented at the Power BI user group as the feature sort of session a few times over the last few years now, and I do the what's new in Power BI for the last two years or so. So a little bit about me. I'm a subject matter expert for the Business Intelligence and Data Analysis program at Corporate Finance Institute. So talk a lot about Power BI, Power Query, Excel, but have branched out as well to talk a little bit more about Python, Tableau, R, SQL. So sort of any BI or data science, any application kind of within that realm, I have some sort of interest in. I have a blog and website, feathersanalytics.com, where some of my previous sessions are up there, and I have some blog posts for what's new in Power BI as well. So speaking of what's new, we've had the March 2022 feature release just came out today. So I was sort of just browsing through this over the last few hours, and as always, there's a blog post. So probably not going to be able to go into too much detail and too many of these brand new things today. But if you're interested in learning a little bit more, or you just want to see the complete list of all the new features, would definitely recommend to check this out. And so on the blog post, you kind of have the prompt to download the new version of Power BI, and then all the new features are split into these categories of like reporting, sort of the Power Query section of data connectivity and preparation, some stuff in the Power BI service, and so on as we go down. So one of the features that I talked about either last month or the month before is the new format pane in Power BI. So when I jump into Power BI in just a moment, I can quickly highlight that again. But that's been in preview for a few months now. I think since November it's been in preview. Last month in February, it became the default view in the newest release of Power BI. So the format pane you see is the new one. And then coming up in May, so just in a few months now, it's going to be generally available, which means that the old format pane will no longer be able to use. Then the second new feature in sort of the reporting category is error bars. And I think this is really cool. This is the one that, like I said, when we jump into Power BI, I'm going to spend a little bit of time going over this new feature. So we're going to find that in the analytics pane in Power BI, and this allows us to add either error bars or error shading to our line chart. So I think with that, I'm just going to jump into Power BI, and we can see a little bit of how this works. So this is my Power BI report that I use to demo the what's new in Power BI. Just before we get to error bars, just want to call out the new format pane. So that's this pane on the right-hand side of my screen here. And when I click the format visual, this little paintbrush icon, we can see that we have a little bit more modern experience. We've split all the formatting options into visual specific versus general. So in general, this is sort of all of the format options that are common to all of the elements or all of the visuals in the report. And in this visual sort of subheader, we have only the formatting options specific to these visuals. But if I just go to the error bars page, I have set up just a really basic line chart here. We have 4 categories, A, B, C, D. We have a DAX measure. If I just open up my fields pane, total value, which populates the values. And what I want to do is add error bars. So to do this, I can go to the analytics pane. So within the visualizations pane, this analytics pane, and this is where we can do stuff like we can find anomalies, which is really cool. We can forecast as well sometimes if we're working with time series data. And in here, this is where we can add a lot of context to our visuals as well. So we can add things like a min, a max, average, like constant lines. So if you ever need to add any sort of like references to your visuals, like if you want to show maybe like what your target sales amount is versus what you've actually achieved year to date, or you want to show like compared to competition, all of these sort of extra more static contextual elements we can do in the visualizations pane. So if you're not really had a look at this before, we definitely recommend it. But new this month is this new error bars section. So if I expand that, we can see that we have a couple options. We want to apply settings to the total value measure. So that's the only one in my line chart right now. And then just underneath, we have sort of the same fields well, where we need to add a measure or a column that will have like our upper bound and our lower bound for those error bars. So what I've had to do to create these error bars is actually build out some new DAX measures to populate these. So the first thing I did, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so we can see what's going on, is I just had to calculate the standard error for each of the categories, and this is what I'm going to use to create those error bars. So the first thing I did was calculate the standard deviation of the value of what's populating the line chart, the values of the line chart. Then I'm just have another variable for n, which is like the number of observations. So basically just the number of rows in my data set. Then I'm taking the square root of that n, and then I'm just dividing the standard deviation by that square root of n. And this returns the standard error. When I put this in the visual, that's going to be applied to each of these categories individually. So now I know the standard error of this amount in each of my categories. And to add these to error bars, what I need to do, I created 2 DAX measures, one for the lower bound and one for the upper bound. So if I look at the upper bound here, all I'm doing is I'm taking my total value, which again is what's populating the line chart, and I'm just adding that standard error to it. And on the error bar for the lower bound on the minus sign, instead of adding the standard error, I'm taking that away. So now when I drop this error bar plus onto the upper bound of the error bar, we can see that we add these upper bound error bars onto each point on the line chart. And if I just can make that a different color just so it stands out a little bit more, we can reduce the transparency. We can make the borders a bit bigger as well. Like an orange or something. There we go. So now we can see the error bars on the upper bound of each of the data points, and I can do the same thing on the lower bound as well, just like that. And so now when I hover on each point, in the tooltip by default, we have this cool little icon next to the upper and the lower bounds. which actually replicates. We have the total value. We can see that it's blue. Its value is 201. The upper bound on the error bar is 220, and on the lower bound, it's 182. And as we've seen, we've sort of gone through a few of these basic formatting options as well. But then one thing we can do is, instead of a bar, we can turn that off, and I can turn on having a shaded area. So this is really similar to if we've used the forecast functionality in the analytics pane before. We can have sort of confidence levels of our forecast, and it looks exactly like this as well. We have those shaded areas around the upper and lower band of our values. And so now, instead of just those error bars at the specific points, we can see it around the entire line chart as well. So I'll probably leave the error bars there at this point. I've only been playing around with it for the last little bit, but I think this is really cool. This is a great way that we can show maybe some uncertainty in our data, and again, it's just another option in the analytics pane to show some more contextual information around the information within our visual, within our Power BI report. So I think that's really cool. Yeah, so that was probably my favorite feature so far from March. From February, one thing that I wanted to go over, and I probably won't go through an example, but I just want to bring attention to it before I hand it over back to Ken and Christian. Is in last month in February, a lot of the new reporting features were around sensitivity labels, label policy, as well, becoming generally available in Power BI. And this is something that I wasn't overly familiar with. So I did a bit of a deep dive, and I think if this is something that, if you're using Power BI in a larger enterprise and you are using some different data sets that do contain sensitive information, and that you do want sort of data protection and confidentiality around some of the data in some of your Power BI reports, this is something that I would definitely check out. So there's a lot of great documentation, again on the Microsoft blogs, sensitivity labels in Power BI. So we go over sort of the important considerations, how it works in Power BI in the desktop as well as the service. And then the other blog that I liked is how we can apply sensitivity labels in the service as well. So this is a Power BI Pro or Premium per user. You need that licensing, and it needs to be enabled within your workspace in order to use it. But I would definitely say this is something to check out, and is just a great feature around sort of that data governance and administration around confidentiality and sensitivity of some of your data. But with that, I know I'm really excited to hand it back to Christian now, as he's going to talk about one of my favorite topics in Power BI or Power Query of self-joins. And I couldn't believe anyone else cared about this enough to make a whole presentation about it, in fact. So yeah, really looking forward to it. Thank you, everyone, for your time. And yeah, just going to throw it back to Ken and back to Christian now.
Thanks, Joseph. As always, appreciate the hard work. Honestly, I just, for folks that don't actually build presentations and whatever, I know for myself, and I think for you too, Joseph. I mean, we prefer having a few days to be able to actually work with the technology to really get into it. So the fact that you got 3.5 hours to download and install the software and then come up with a presentation out of it on short notice is absolutely fantastic. Well done.
All good.
Yeah, it's always entertaining to do it under pressure, isn't it? So
totally.
On the topic note, I forgot actually, but years ago, I mean, you and I actually had a conversation around self joins in Power Query, and I think my comment to you when I first showed them to you is, there's a really cool technique when I'm there where you can use these, but I'm not going to show it to you today. I think was the first one. But when you see it, you're going to email me and go, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" Yeah. And Joseph emailed me and say, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" And yeah, Christian's right on board with the same thing here too. So it's just
cool.
This stuff's amazing. Anyway, I'm super pleased to welcome Cristian to the program. I've been wanting this to happen for a while. I knew it was going to eventually. I can tell you that I knew that this was going to happen the first time I met Cristian. I just had this feeling about him. This is a guy who I first met in Bulgaria. A week later, I was in Slovenia, and Cristian was there as well. He traveled 5 countries across to come and do things. And then he asked why I flew and why he didn't let me drive, or why he wouldn't let me drive him through the 5 countries to get here, which speaks volumes as to the kind of guy that Cristian actually is. He's the only guy I can say who's ever attended one of my Q&A sessions from the backseat of a moving car, half a country across the world, or half a world away, is pretty awesome as well. So, Cristian, great pleasure to welcome you here. I'm really excited to see what you have to say. I'm going to shut up now and let you have the stage. Although I will, would you like me to moderate and interrupt with questions, or do you want to save them for the end? I should have asked you that at the beginning. What's your preference?
We can have questions after each demo, because the session will be mostly demos, and we can have questions.
Perfect. Then I'll pop back and moderate those for you at each break and demo then. Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Let's do it.
Well, thank you, Ken, for hosting me, and it is truly an honor for me to be here and to be invited by you. You know how much I admire you, and I was really happy when to be invited. This is only my 3rd public session, so please don't be too harsh and bear with me with the presentation. And thank you everyone for joining my session. I hope everyone will get at least an idea and maybe learn something new. I'm not sure Ken's expectations on self-joins are the same on what I already prepared, but we'll see. Maybe Ken and the other Power Query masters around here, like Melissa or the SML crew, will not learn something new, but at least they will see some interesting demos. Speaking of Power Query masters, Ken, I've met Alex Powers last week at SQL Bits, and he was actually jealous on my Data Master sticker on the laptop that I got from you in Bulgaria.
Oh, well, that's good to know. All right, I can probably work that out with him, though.
Today we will talk about self-joins, but here I'm not talking only about merge, but also appends and dealing with snapshots. And maybe if my session fits inside the allotted time, we'll also have enough time to talk about writing to SQL from Excel and what to consider when doing this. So I only have few slides, and let's go further. My name is Cristian Angyal. As Ken said, I'm from Romania. I'm a project manager turned into a data guy since a few years now, after discovering Power Pivot, Power Query, and then Power BI. My background is electrical engineering, and I've worked in engineering, quality, project management, business project management, and now I'm working in IT, in data management and analytics. As I've been always lazy, efficient guy, like Patrick says on GainaCube. I always wanted to do my job easier and faster, so I don't have to spend too much time doing repetitive and boring tasks. And I realized from the start that we are all, regardless of the position, sitting on mountains of data. It's only a matter of understanding the data and getting insights and using those insights in order to ease up our work and our life in general. I've always preferred to learn something new in order to ease up my work, and I wanted to check my knowledge in some areas and set for different certification exams. As my first tool used in working with data was Excel, that was my first Microsoft exam, and then starting from there, different areas covered like Power BI, data modeling, with Ken actually, different topics in business intelligence, querying, SQL, at least just enough to be dangerous, like Ken says, Power Platform and Azure fundamentals. And most of what I know in Power Query is due to Ken. And thank you again, Ken, for everything you did for me and the entire community. Let's move to the session. I only have 2 slides, and then we'll go to the demos. In Power Query, most of you know, joins are the processes of combining 2 queries, either in Excel or external data sources using merge in Power Query. For databases, database users, joins are the ones that the actual merge in Power Query. For Excel users, it's the equivalent of VLOOKUP. Joins helps enriching a table by adding new data, returning if needed multiple columns in a query. Can look up based on multiple conditions, and using joins we can compare lists from two tables. Most Power Query host applications used by me are Excel and Power BI, and both of them are using the same standard joins. These 6 that you have on the screen: left outer join, right outer, full outer, inner, left, anti, plus one that I've learned from Ken, the full anti-join. When you are doing a left anti-join, a right anti-join, and then append them together. I haven't worked with all the Power Query sources yet, but I suspect they behave in the same manner everywhere, as M-Engine is the same. Some of the demos today are only working in Excel, and I will show them to you. Today, one of the things that not many people are using is using or merging the same table to itself, exactly like this part here. So some of the demos that I'll be doing are using this, and I told you some don't. So we'll see further how it goes. We'll go into demos with, I have prepared 5 demos: getting the previous row, getting the last row, self-referencing tables, getting snapshots and building a history table, and writing to SQL from Excel. So these are all my slides for now. Let me share my other screen with the demos. Should be visible now. Not this one, this one. Is it visible, Ken?
It is, you bet.
Okay, so first demo. The use case here is getting the daily cases from a running total list of COVID cases. Like everybody these last 2 years was doing different reports on COVID. I took the official list from Romania with the COVID cases, and this is how the JSON provided looks like. I actually took part of it and up until March 13. To be honest, I didn't have the time today to finish and update the list, but I just wanted to make sure. But we are getting running totals here. And we need to get daily cases. So we need to add an additional column here just to do the daily cases. So what do? So we just go to Power Query, get the data inside Power Query. So for this one, the raw data is already there. And start from there. First, I will not use the raw data connection. I'm using a technique that I've learned from Ken, referencing the table and rename it. First step is to rename it to something that we can use it further. And we will use for this demo the field access operator. And how does this work? Let me make it bigger. If we click on one of the cells here, right click and drill down, we'll get a new step with this code. Power Query is writing this code for us. It's actually referencing the previous table, the previous step in the query, getting the row number, and here it's 1 because Power Query is zero-based indexing, and getting the name of the column. Oh, for now, let's just copy this formula and delete the step. this is how we can access a field inside Power Query on a specific field, saying the record number, which is this one, and the column number. Well, we're copying the formula, deleting this one, and we will add a custom column now. Doing a custom column, maybe you will be surprised, but we just write an underscore here. And okay, getting an underscore actually returns the entire record for each row. So if you see the preview here, we have the date, the two columns that we have in this record for each of them. Well, instead of this underscore, we can modify it, modify the custom column, and put our copied formula, and instead of 1, which is the record, as I said before, we will put this underscore. If we are doing this, we are actually referring to that specific record, that specific cell in the record this time. Because on each of them, we actually want the value from the previous row, we will need to go one step behind and add an additional index column from 0. For Power Query is adding the step, and then moving to the next step, we can modify a little bit the formula, and instead of the underscore with everything, we can just write the column name here, index. So now, because this is row 0, and I'm referencing it through this column, which is 0, I'm getting the exact same result. But I don't want this result. I need the previous result. So what do? We just edit the formula and do an index -1. And this is exactly what we wanted. For this one, the second row, which is having index 1, we are getting the value from this previous row, which is 217. From 277, the third row, we are getting the value, the previous value, 260. Well, we have an error here. We have to treat this error. My previous session was on Power Query errors, so this is easy. We just use a try otherwise. Then, if this is an error, I want to return the number infected. And this way, we are getting rid of errors, and everything works fine, right? But we need the daily cases, so we need to actually modify again the formula. Wrap everything in a parenthesis. Just do a simple subtractions, number infected minus try the other one, and we are getting the right cases, the daily cases. Next step is to delete the index column because we don't need it. Modify the name, daily cases. Control A to select everything and detect data types. This is something else that I've learned from Ken just before loading the data. Set the data types correctly and manually. Close and load. And we should load it here. This one, load to table, existing table, this one. This is the result doing the field access technique. Well, it's not actually referencing, self-referencing. It's doing a reference inside the cell, but it's it's a technique that I've used, and actually it's my first technique that I've learned from Power Query Academy in the beginning. Is everything, does it make sense? Anybody played with this before?
Cristian, I see we've got one comment or question on this one is about how's the performance with large data sets. Are you going to come back to that after you show
Yes.
the self-merge? Okay, fair enough.
Yes,
let's
I
hold
will
on
come
to that
back
question.
to that. And actually, this is why I wanted to show this one, because I've learned another method from you, Ken, and you said that you know it from Oz du Soleil. So let's try the other method.
I'm thinking the one that we learned from Oz was actually a different one, but that's okay, not a big deal. But I'm glad to see you're going to cover the self-merge. So let's jump into that one then.
Yeah. So there is another option. Let's say I'm learning over the months, years. I'm reading some more blog posts, and I found out about a different technique. Let's try to do that technique. So I'm just referencing again the initial query. First step is to modify the query name, and I will just add an index column from 0. So on this one, go on add column, index column from 0. Very easy. Well, we need to add another column from 1. And then this is where the current join actually comes in, and this is the first time when you'll see it. Our next step is to go on home and do a merge. On this one, I want to merge this table with itself by joining the index, this index with index.1, because I want to get for this row, the value from the previous row. This is why for this one, I'm getting the other one. And you'll see what I'm talking about. After doing the merge, if we check inside click on the white space near the table, not on the table because this will drill down, we see that we have a match. For the first one, we don't see anything because we don't have an index lower than 0 on the previous one, but for this one, we are getting the value here in the preview for the first row. For the next one, we are getting the value from this one, 260. So just we need to expand it and get the number infected. We can keep this one because we want to have it differently named like the first one. And one thing to note here, when we are expanding a table, the sort order is not the original one. So if you see here, I don't have the 0 first. So next step is to sort ascending and do everything correctly. And this time, if we check this one, after the merge, for the second row, we have the value from the first one. From the third one, we have the 260 from this one. I think it will go like this, easier. Control 2, 260, 260, 270, 270, everything works. So it's just a matter of dealing with nulls. Replace the value. Null with 0. And now it's just a matter of doing a simple subtraction, adding a column, subtract, and get the daily numbers. We could modify the name here, or we can modify the name inside the step that Power Query wrote for us. And this is something that I recommend to everyone. Always have the formula bar visible, daily cases. Just like before, clean up the data, delete the columns that we don't need, Control A, detect data types, and load the data into Excel. Close and load as a table on existing worksheet here. So the numbers are pretty much the same. On the first row, it's only a matter of how we are dealing with errors or nulls, so it doesn't matter much. Everything works perfect on both cases, on small data sets. I've actually timed everything this morning, and let me open up the completed one. I also have a file with completed data. And I've timed these two queries this morning. So I was doing the same thing and using monkey tools with TimeSleuth, the tool from Ken. I was doing 3 different trials on this on these two queries. Well, for small data sets, there is not such a big difference. So for each query, it was loaded 5 times in order to level the potential additional load from the computer. And I did it 3 times. So in both cases, it was 2 point something seconds. Well, in this one, it was a little bit higher with the field access operator method, but there is not much of a difference. But I wanted to test it in a different scenario. And for this, I've added an additional step. I've actually created a parameter. Let me show you. I've created a new parameter from here, manage parameters, new parameter. It's just a simple parameter called table repeat times with a default value of 3. And inside, I just copied the queries, the initial queries. And inside these queries, I added an additional step, this one. Let me make it bigger. Ctrl+Shift+ for make it bigger. I've added an additional step with a table.repeat. Actually, this is the only place where up until now I've used table.repeat. So I'm just using the previous step in the query and repeated the table how many times I have it in the parameter. So if I'm going with to do column profile and do the profile based on entire data set, say it's 2181 compared to 700, how many days I had in the original query. So for both of them, I repeat the data inside and did the same operations and loaded the data inside the data model. These are the data loaded in the data model. And then using the same monkey tools with the TimeSleuth, I did the comparisons. Which one do you think it went better? Well, let me show you. There's a huge difference on the two methods. Using field access operator, in average, I had a refresh time of more than 200 seconds. 208 actually, in average. And on the merge, on the inner merge, using the index, the 2 indexes, it was still 2.5 seconds comparable with what we had before. So comparing the two methods, both techniques are working and returning correct results. This is actually the first thing that we need to care to get the right data. But field access works good, but for large data sets can be really slow. And this, I think, will cover the question that we had earlier, right? And usually I'm saying usually because it's not happening all the times. The user interface drive operations are faster. So please try to leverage those ones. And when multiple techniques are available, like these two techniques doing the same thing, always think of growing data sets, because usually we are working with growing data sets, and test your data. If you can test it with the monkey tools, very good. If you want to test it with table.profile and use it in Power BI, it's also very good. Phil Seamark, I think, has a really good blog post on checking the parameters and the whole thing. So, does that make sense so far? Any questions, Ken?
I mean, there's a question. I mean, it's a technical question. I mean, do you know why the big difference? I can say personally, I don't. I mean, there's something inside the engine that doesn't work there. But one of the big keys that I think that people should take away from this is that the user interface driven method is A, easier to build, B, easier to audit, and C, way the heck and gone faster with large data sets. Overall, I mean, why it happens in this case isn't really a concern as much as the fact that it does, right?
Yeah. Well, this is something that I've learned from you, and even if the number of steps might be bigger using the UI, I always prefer to do it like this if I can, because as you said, it's much more easy. See, comparing the number of steps on the self-join, it's bigger than this one, and but it's easier to audit it and see what's happening inside.
Yeah, for sure. I do know, just to throw out, Cristian, because I know where the original question came from Nick Osdale Papa, and I know Nick, I know that you actually have a subscription to my Power Query recipe cards, and you would have noticed at some point that we actually replaced the recipe card and put a note on the bottom of it that says that the self-join technique for doing this kind of work is faster than the index alternative, and that's exactly why we had that in there. So, Cristian, I can't tell you how much of a relief it was for me to see. I don't know what's actually more cool, the fact that you're timing this with monkey tools, or when you said, which one do you think is faster? I'm like, please, God, let it be what I think it's going to be, because I've been telling people it's the self-join, and it's really awesome to see it come through that much.
Yeah. Yeah, and I saw an additional question from Sue, if does it have anything to do with query folding? And no, so it doesn't, because this one is getting the data from Excel, and query folding is happening only on certain type of data sources like SQL query, Oracle, SQL databases, Oracle, and other stuff. So it's not related. As Ken said, it must be something internal, and getting every row on every operations on large data sets can be really slow.
Yeah, there's also a question here about adding the index fields and things like that too. One of the things to be aware of with the index field is that the index field actually breaks query folding. So it also, what that basically means at that point in time is that all the data does need to be read into memory. And I think that that's probably a big aspect to what's actually going on with this thing, and why the self-join, I mean, it can look and say, well, let's compare this to a previous row. For some reason, that seems to work, and the logic works for the Power Query engine. If you ever do run into an issue where the data is not sorted in the correct order, you may need to buffer the table before you do your self-join. That performance then is going to be a little bit more synonymous with what happens in the index type join, but sometimes it's necessary. But in most of the experience I've had, it actually hasn't been. So,
yeah. Okay, let's move to my second demo. This one is from the real world. It's a oversimplified problem, but I wanted to show it to you still. So we have an entire manufacturing process. I don't really care about the entire process. I only took 4 steps out of the process, 4 test steps, the last ones on a production line. On each of the steps, different products with different serial numbers are running one after another, running their own test programs. If they pass, they go to the next station. If they fail, they go in a repair station. They are repaired and retested. And this is everything that is happening. Not very complicated. I wanted to keep it simple. Well, for this one, I have a simple data set. It's this one with some serial numbers, 4 different serial numbers, each of them with records on the test stations, test 1, test 2, test 3, and their results, the date when it was tested, and the result. So each of them are having more or less the same type of data. The only thing that I care and the thing that I want to get out of this entire data set exported from a different manufacturing system is the last status for each product. So for product A, for serial number A100, for example, from product A, it was test 4 on the 12th of March, and the result was fail. For this one, for B100, it was the last result. Actually, the last step recorded was a pass in test 3 here. So we are waiting for test 4. So for each of them, I'm trying to get the latest step. So how do we do it? Pretty easy, actually, we would think. I just loaded this data inside Power Query. This is the data with just a simple step of change type, referencing again the query, rename it, I don't know, last serial number status, for example. What do we want? We want the last test date, right? So we should group by serial number. Maybe we want to see how many tests there were on each of them. So total test, and have this count, and add an additional step and get the test date. But for test date, I need to get the maximum of the test date here. Well, pretty easy, right? Should be okay. But out of this, I want to have it merged with the result of this step. So out of everything, I want to filter everything based on these results. So if we would consider that we have 2 different tables, the initial table and the group tables, how will we do it? Normally, we would need 2 different queries, merge them, and go from there. But there is a better way. We can just go on merge queries, merge it to itself based on serial number and test date for each of them, and do an inner join. It's obvious that it's the matching is 404, but why would we do this? You would ask. Well, first thing first, let's modify this step on merge queries, for example. And this one, the name, I don't know, rename it to last tests. And on merge query, we can do something here really cool that I don't remember actually where I've learned this from, but I loved it and it's working in a lot of scenarios. If we format a little bit the M code, we will see and we can read how this code is written by the engine. And let me walk you through. So we are using a table.nested join. This one is taking the previous step, the last test, and joining it with the same table, with a second table, which by coincidence, this time it's the same one, based on these two columns. But I don't want to have it like this. It's getting an additional column called grouped rows, and the join kind is inner. But this one, we can a little bit modify it, and from this one we can modify it and say I want to merge the source with the last test based on serial number and test date. And this time we will have a much better picture, having this initial data set filtered by the latest serial number, the latest records for each serial number and for the maximum date. Well, this should be fine. It works. Let's load it. Load it as a table here. It works, right? Well, I see something strange here. I should have, because I have only 4 serial numbers, here I should have only 4 results, right? Let's see which one is doubled here. Duplicate values. Well, we have a problem with this one. Let's check why. Because B200, it was tested on test 1, it failed once, and then it passed. On test 2, it passed without a problem. On test 3, it failed first, and then it passed. And then on test 4, it failed. So here we have all 3 values from test 3 and 4 because they were done in the same day. When I did the group by serial number and the test date, I took the maximum test date. So for every merge that I did from the initial data set with the maximum date for each serial number, I actually had for 1 row of the initial table, 3 rows on test date. Are we still on?
Yep, you're still on.
Okay, I saw something and I heard something strange. So I think we have a problem. So we better fix it, right? Let's reference the initial query again. And modify the name on this one. Ctrl+Shift+. Last serial number status correct. Last. Well, as we had several steps in several stations, the first thing I would do here is to add to extract the number of the test, so the station ID from it. So maybe we can add a column, extract the last character from this column, a single character. For now, it's a single one. Just modify the name. I don't want it as last characters. Maybe name it as station ID. Modify the type to a number. And then do the group by exactly like we did before. So we can group by again by serial number. Serial group by, where is it? Yeah, maybe we can still count the number of tests. Number of tests. Count the rows. Get the last station ID where we need it. Last station. This one, it's a maximum of station ID. And also we need the last test date, right? Doing the max again from the test date. this time we have the right last date by station ID. And now we are doing the same thing like we did before, but in order to make it easier, we can rename this step as, I don't know, base, for example. Not this one. This one is the base because this one will be merged to itself. I'm trying to modify the name so I don't have to hash reference it afterwards. Just eliminate the spaces. So doing again a merge on this one to itself based on 3 columns this time. Serial number, last station ID, and test date. Serial number, last station ID, and test date. And again, choosing inner join because we will need it afterwards to filter the initial step. We'll get the same results. It's 4 out of 4, but here we can modify the M language and add exactly like we did before. So let's format it a little bit. I don't want to have the same grouped rows table joined to itself. I want to have the base merged with group tables. So we modify the base, the name of the table. I think here it was station ID. We will see, we'll get an error if I don't match exactly the names. And I think this one was test date. Yeah, it works. So now this time I'm joining this table to this table. I'm doing the inner join, and the end result, it's actually only 4 rows. Out of this one, I don't need the last 2 columns. We can delete them, and this time we can load the data in Excel. Load it as a table in the existing workbook here. And this time we are getting only 4 rows and the correct ones. Let's check them. So for serial number A100, the result that we were supposed to get the last test for it, it was on the test 4 station, on the 12th, and a fail. So A100 is this one, test 4, fail, working. A200, another filter. A200 was supposed to be, the last result is on test station 3, it's a pass on the 12th. A200 here, it's this one, it works. And all of them are working correctly this time. So what have we learned from this one? Let me get the second one with the final one. For this one, we have to pay attention to the following things. Merging can be done on tables, on 2 tables, as I said at the beginning, but we can do it inside the same query. And we can do all 6 types of joins because every step of most of the steps in each query are actually returning tables. So we can modify, tweak a little bit the M language and merge the tables resulting from different steps inside the same query and reduce the total number of queries. Always, but always, don't just assume the result is correct. Do some validations like I did with conditional formats and check if what was actually requested is returned. So don't just assume it's correct, validate it. always check for duplicates before merging. As I told you at the beginning, doing on the first query, we were joining a table from the first step with another table from the second step, but in the second step, we had the same value 3 times. Always on merge, try to make sure you're doing merges on single line tables in order to get the same results. If you needed to do it like this, at least do it on consciently and on purpose. And in this case, I had a good option to get to obtain uniqueness of the rows because I had test station 1, 2, 3, or 4. Try to find the right solution to obtain uniqueness with, I don't know, indexes or combining the several columns there. When you are doing the merges, try to do them on unique rows. And this was the demo for getting the last record using Power Query, and I'm open for questions on this one, if any.
I don't think I actually see any questions in here, Cristian. I think that that everybody seems to be. I mean, you're getting lots of comments with you know a lot of happy faces and hearts and everything else, and some comments that nobody's or some people have never seen an inner join example before, which is always cool. So I would say
happy it's something new. Happy
yeah.
I did something new. Really happy.
I'll tell you one thing I love seeing in this one, Cristian, and I think this is a sort of an understated technique. I love the fact that you're actually making a join and then just immediately deleting the table that comes out from the other end because it's not relevant to the solution, but just that join technique that thins it down to just what you need without even having to extract the results is a very cool sort of twist on using the grouping for these things. Pretty awesome.
No, thank you. Yeah, I loved it too, and I'm actually using this technique at work. We are having lots of thousands, hundreds of thousands of serial numbers tested on different stations. And if I have data from different other Excel files, not from the systems, and I need to see the latest status for each of them, and if I get the entire serial number history for all of them, well, this is the technique that I'm using at work, and it works.
Cool. Hey, we did just have a question that came in from Anthony. And Anthony, are you talking about this demo or the previous demo with the self-join table? He's asking if the third step referenced the second step twice. Is that correct?
First demo.
In the first demo? Okay.
Yep.
So, Cristian, in your first demo, did the third step reference the second step twice?
This is the first demo. Let me see.
Query editor.
On the self join or on this one? I'm not sure I got the question.
One of these added index 1 referred to added index twice. I believe.
And I'll show you how. On this merge step queries, so first I added 2 index columns, one starting from 0, incrementing with 1, and the second one starting from 1, incrementing to 1, because I wanted to shift everything from this side, actually not this one.
Yeah, I understand the indexes. In the M language, you have this pound sign, and it refers to added index. It's like
this one.
In the M language, you have like 2 references to the same previous step. So this is I see for the first time.
Yes, because I'm doing the merges to itself. This is what the current join here is doing. This is why it's referring to the same step before, because the previous step is actually the table. I'm merging the table resulting from the previous step. Let me show you something. If I'm modifying the name here, rename. Actually, yeah, a different technique to rename is just press F2, delete the space, and then if I'm checking the M language now, I don't have the hash pound. See, it's because I added the space between.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, it's referred twice, and this is how it should be.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you check the previous query that says field access operator?
This one. Okay.
Yeah. Let's look at the third step, and I think it did the same thing.
No, here I was just starting from the field access operator, this one, which was also having a hash space inside, and this is why the step itself it's quoted with hash pound in front F and double quotes. But on this one, also, if I'm modifying the name and go here, you won't see it again.
No, so if you look into the edit formula, not in the...
It's the same one. So if you're checking this one, it's the same one from here.
No, I understand. But look at the beginning when it says table add column, it refers to the previous step, added index, and then you add the formula that says try, and it refers again to the second step, right?
Yeah, because I'm trying, I've built it from scratch. This one, I was referring to the previous step. I'm getting the data from this table on this row, record which has index -1. So the previous record from this column.
Right.
This is how you are field accessing a certain any table. Let me show you.
Okay, my only confusion was that the reference to the previous step was twice in the M code, and I thought it's redundant, or maybe you don't need it. But I see that it's.
I hope
you have to have it. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to have it because you have to refer to the previous step. Actually the table, which is resulting from the previous step, on this record, on this column.
Yes, makes sense. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, if there's no additional questions, I would go to the third demo.
Yep, let's move on to the next one for sure.
How are we with time?
You're good. You got as much time as you need, Cristian. Well, I mean, not the 3 hours you were asking for yesterday.
Okay.
You still got time.
Okay, I'll show you a technique that I've learned from Matt Ellington this time. And then we'll go to the next one, which is derived out of this. Let's say you are getting from me or from Ken or from some other Power Query student CSV file, because I wanted to have it as CSV. It's easier like this, with some Power Query masters. Let me show you. This is the one. And it's a matter of just having the first name, the last name, and the Twitter handle. This is a list that you should consider if you really want to learn Power Query. I want to load it inside Excel, so we just go to data, from text CSV, load it from desktop. I will just go on the other side on my other screen, desktop, VanPUG, demo files. Yeah, this is the file, import it. Standard operations. See, Power Query is trying to check what are the columns, if there are any transformations. Nothing fancy, really, really simple. So on this one, first step would be to promote the headers. Just make sure and doing it on purpose, loading the data types, setting the correct data types. I see that I have a row here, an empty one. I don't actually need it. We can filter it out and load the data in Excel. Close and load too. Come on. Existing worksheet, P6. Okay. Yeah, I'm happy. I learned how to import CSV to Excel. But now I want to add some comments because on each of them, I do follow them on Twitter and I saw some blogs and things like this. And I would like to add an additional column here, doing just having the website for each of them. Well, I have some data here on the right. What did I do? I have some links here and I want to add them in the table. Well, I'm adding this one for math, and let's say I need Control Shift right arrow. Let's see that for math and for Ken, I've learned what are their websites, and I'm really happy that I'm having their websites. I will do the other ones too. Just to make it more visible afterwards, I will mark these rows with a color. It's not something that it needs to be done, but you will see why. Because I want to, at a certain point, I want to sort everything not by last name, I want to sort it by first name. And everything works. But what if I, by mistake, I'm just right-clicking, refreshing the data? What just happened? The links that I put before are not linked, are not on the right spot, right? So for Ken, the link is not there anymore. Everything is messed up. Why is that? Well, this is happening because this column that I added here is not actually linked to the result of the Power Query that I did before. But there is an option how to do it. Let me Control Z several times. I think it's not even going correctly, so I will modify them manually. This one here, mark them again, and try to fix the problem. How do we fix it? Well, actually, we have to get the data from this table inside Power Query again. So we go to data from table/range, and we need to reload the data, but this time not from CSV, but from Excel. So if you see here, what I'm doing, I'm getting the data from the current workbook from this table. I'm getting the content inside Power Query again. Well, this time I will just put it, I don't know, temp table. Set the data types, Control A, transform, detect data types. And what do we do with it? Well, we go back to the previous query, the initial one that we loaded into Excel, and we are adding here an additional step, which is actually merge queries. Merge queries, I want to merge this initial table with the temp table that I did on the Twitter handle, which is unique. I'm doing a left outer merge here. I'm getting all the results, everything works good. And from the resulting table, I'm selecting only the website. So in my initial query that I took from CSV, I actually merged the query that I brought from Excel, and I got my link. This time I'm reloading it, and for the first time, I will get an additional column, which is not a problem because this is normal. I just want to refresh it, nothing fancy. So I'm getting an additional column here, but this is something which is normal. Just delete this column and do a refresh. Well, let me mark it again. Mark those two rows again and try to do some sorting now. I want to sort by first name this time. Well, this time everything works because the data in this column is not manually inputted anymore and not related to the initial query. It is related directly through this temp table and the merge. So if I want to put another one, let me sort it again and add some additional links for Celia and Oz, for example. This time, let's modify and mark it with a different color so we know that these are the ones that are the new ones. Refresh the query again. Everything works. Sorting the data on any other field works perfectly. Not a problem anymore. Well, this technique, I've learned it from Matt Ellington. He has a really good blog post, an old one. This is the complete file. The original technique was developed by Matt. This is the link, and I will provide it to all of you with self-referencing table. He's doing it on bank statements, I think. Yeah, bank statements. And I wanted to show it to you at the beginning because for me, at least, it was really good to have it because I really needed it on some cases. The only gotcha here is that you need to have a unique ID for each row when you're doing the merge. If you don't have it, like I had it here with a Twitter handle, which was unique, you can build it out of a combination of 2 or 3 or more columns, or you could do the merge based on additional. Maybe you don't have to do an additional column combining some data or adding indexes. You can even merge it directly on multiple columns. But this is something that everyone needs to be really careful with. And there is one drawback. This technique only works in Excel, so it doesn't work in Power BI because we're actually getting the result from the initial query back into Power Query, and we cannot do it in Power BI. Any questions on this one?
Don't see any questions per se, just it looks like you blew some people's minds, so that's cool. We did get one question about whether or not you're going to provide the sample file at the end of all this.
Yes.
All right,
yes,
awesome.
All sample files will be provided.
Okay, we do have one question. Henry's asking, what if the name is updated in Excel?
If I'm modifying the name here, only the name, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. Let me put it here with can pulse and delete this one, refresh it. It doesn't matter much because actually it matters. And now I remember why. Because this one, the initial query goes to the CSV file and not on this one. We are redoing the same steps from the initial query. So what we did here, let me show you what I mean. Nice to have direct live failures. the query that I'm loading is this one, PQ masters, the initial one, right? And this one is actually getting the data from CSV. And even if I'm modifying anything in those three columns that I had, everything is rewritten when I'm getting the new data, actually the refreshed data out of that CSV. But we can try something else. We can actually, let me see if I still have that one open. Seems not. The CSV, and try to add some additional names here.
For reference, I think he answered Henry's question. He was just curious whether or not the master data would still prevail or whether or not it would be overwritten. But
yes,
I think the short answer on that one is, I mean, you're adding notes to a table that don't originate in the master data source, and that's why they're being that's why the overwrite is happening. But yes, the original master data will still stick around.
Yeah. I think it was this one. Yeah. So if I'm refreshing the data, everything works. No problem. Well, starting from this example from Matt Ellington, a student of mine last year had a different use case. He wanted to get the Danube levels snapshots from a website, and I'll show you what I mean. So the use case is like this in the next demo. I'm going on an official website in Romania where all the levels for the Danube levels are recorded and printed, actually showed every day. The location, it's the actual city inside Romania where the Danube flows, and this is in reverse order, and I'll show you how we treated it. But actually, this is kilometer 0. It's the endpoint of the Danube towards the Black Sea, and Baziash is the first one. So I'm getting the water levels and the dates, but I only have for the current date. So on this website, there is no history, no nothing. I'm only getting snapshots. And I want to build some charts based on each location. And for this, I need different snapshots appended together. How can we do it? Let me go back to my demo. These are the actual, this is the map of Romania. This is Baziash, the one that I showed you. It's the first one, and Sulina, it's here. This is the Black Sea. So we have recordings of the water levels on each of these 23 points in Romania on daily level, but only as a snapshot. How can we do it easily? How can we write history and have snapshots on daily basis? Well, it's not that complicated, and everything is based on Matt's demo before. So I already prepared the simple Power Query just to get the data from the website, doing the navigation and do some transformations on the columns. Nothing fancy, very easy stuff. And in the end, I ended up, actually, this is the data that I need. The location, the kilometer, even if this one could be only once, but let's say I needed to be recorded, the water level and the date when this water level was recorded. So this time, if I'm refreshing, I'm getting the exact same data from the website. And in order to do a snapshot, I'm just doing a reference on this one, modified with a name, I don't know, water levels. And from here, I wanted to have an index on this one, but as I told you, these are in reverse order. Kilometer 0, it's actually the last kilometer of the Danube towards the Black Sea. So I need to have because I need to have an index in my table, I will add an index, but I will do a custom index. Because I know there are 23 rows here, I will start from 23. And not counting normally +1, I will count -1 on each of them. I want to have them as the Danube flows from Baziaș towards Sulina. So 1, 2, 3, these are the steps. Besides this, I want to have a column saying that when I took the snapshot, when I did the actual refresh. And I'm just adding a custom column, doing datetime local now. Now, just getting the data and call it, I don't know, snapshot. Snapshot. Because I want to see when the data was actually refreshed and not the last update from the website. These are two separate things. The last update is the actual data from this website, and the snapshot that I took, this one, it's the date and the minute and the second when I'm doing the refresh from the website. Well, this one, I'll do exactly what I did before. Control A to select everything, transform, detect data types. Everything looks good. Let's load the data in Excel. Close and load. Load it as a table. In existing worksheet, I want to load it here. So here I already have a formula prepared just to count the number of rows inside this table. So it doesn't matter on which column. For now, we have 23 records, which is okay. This is standard getting data from website. But in order to get the snapshots, I will do something that I've learned from Matt, and I'll take this data and put it back inside Power Query again. And I will call it water levels loaded, for example. Going back on the previous query, the original one, and here instead of merging the tables like Matt did on his example, I will do something different. I will append queries, and I will append the water levels loaded, this one. As you can see, everything is added together, and we still need to set one more time the data types correctly. Detect data types. This is text, number. Actually, this one I need it to be a date. Now it's good. Number, date time. Because we don't need this step anymore, I don't care much about this one because I have the last one already set it up. And now let's close and load. And you will see that everything works. Instead of 23 records, on the first refresh we have 43 records because we have it here. We have the time. Actually, in order to be more visible, we should modify this one and see the seconds also. Format cells, date, minute, seconds. And here on just wanted to have a formula getting the unique snapshot date times. For now, we have 2 snapshots. Let's say we want to refresh again. So we have 69 records. It's working. It's building up to itself. Well, in terms of functionality, everything works. In terms of logic, we need to fix the logic because, yes, I do want to build it up. Tomorrow, if I'm refreshing the file, getting the data for the 18th of April, but I don't want to have those many records every day. If I'm doing a refresh by mistake or just opening the file, see, it grows every time. So we have to care for this one. So we go back to the query and fix it. And this is really easy. We just group by everything and get the last snapshot. Group by snapshot datetime. Just group everything and give me the last snapshot. Refreshing it again, and out of the, doesn't matter how many records, I'm getting single records based on what I've grouped earlier. And this totally works. Does that make sense so far? Anybody play with this? Any questions on this one?
Can you go back to your table for a second, Cristian? I just want to
Sure.
check something out here real quick with something. Can you do me a favor? Can you copy the entire table and just paste it below where your table is? So basically, or sorry, not the headers, just the data, and copy that at the bottom. So from B5 down to, yeah, there you go, perfect. Now just for those ones, just change the date to March 16th for all those records.
Sorry, go again.
Change the date to March 16th instead of March 17th for those records. You just basically, let's pretend we got some history here.
Okay. Okay.
Perfect. Now refresh. Interesting. It lost the time stamping on it, but I guess the piece that I just wanted to sort of look at on this whole thing here, outside the time stamping, which is maybe that's because I don't know, why would that go away? I would have thought that would stay.
Me too.
Huh, odd.
I know why.
Okay.
Because this one, I got the maximum out of it, and I think this one is the same. I copied everything. Here I should have
right,
had
okay, yeah. So if you were to set those back to the 16th,
but this is the maximum one.
Right. Okay, maybe that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I guess the key point that I was sort of looking at with this whole thing here is that, I mean, you have the ability to go through and actually modify that history. So if you do get a double refresh, you can delete something. If you need to add a day because something got missed, you can, which is an important part. I love the group by technique on the end of that to get down to a single day of records. And I see some comments sort of over here as well that are like, hey, you know, this is really cool. I got to try this, or I have tried this, but I had to be really careful that I didn't, you know, refresh it multiple times. So that grouping gives it that ability to lock it down, which is pretty awesome. Very cool. That's a nice technique. Yeah.
So this one, as I said, it's derived from the original technique developed by Matt, and I did it last year for a student of mine. This is why it's with Romanian data, and it's coming from an actual request from Cristi Tilihoi. Not sure if he's in the meeting here, but this one is, I'm using append instead of merge, and it's usable for snapshots where historic data is not available. In real life, I've used it on several other occasions. Actually, I had a query getting snapshots on different refreshes in a SQL server. But as I'm not a DBA and I was not having rights there to build my own store procedure, I wanted to have it a kind of history out of it. I built it like this inside the table in Excel. There are some tools that can automate the refresh of Power Queries, like I think it's Power Update from Power on BI. They just did it there to be able to refresh itself and got the history for several days, and it totally works. In some cases, it works. But as you said, there are some things that we have to check and we have to deal with. These are the duplicates. Here it was solved with the group by. In other cases, could be solved with something else. Well, we always have to check with the duplicates on this one, and this one is also only working in Excel.
Perfect, because that actually leads you to your next question. Henry's asked, if I want to use this technique in Power BI, can I use an external Excel file? How do I pump data into the external file if I want to do it? So can you use it in Power BI?
No, not exactly like it is here, but something similar can be used in Power BI, and I can show it to you if we have enough time. Not sure how do we stay with time, Ken?
I'm thinking that we might need to hold that one for another meetup, Cristian, just because I've got an appointment that's coming up in the not too distant future that I got to make here. But the one thing that I would throw out as a potential opportunity, I know you can set up a self-referencing table in Power BI. The one concern that I've always had with that, which it doesn't happen in Excel. In Excel, it gets dumped to the grid, so you actually have a physical trail of it. You can set up your stuff so you can set up a self-referencing or self-appending table in Power BI, but at that point, if anything were to happen and you were to wipe that table accidentally somehow, it's not loaded anywhere, so you can't get it back, which is a concern that I've always had with that one. But my solution, Henry, for what you're dealing with is I'd actually be looking at Power Automate, because I think with Power Automate, you could probably get to the point where you could dump your data and append it into another file using Power Automate for writing records to a solution or whatnot. So that's my thought. What do you think, Cristian?
Well, if this is the last one, we'll keep the writing to SQL from a different time, because I also had another demo on snapshots written to SQL, but we'll have it on a different session next time.
Oh, it just means we have to have you come back and do another one, man.
Yeah, and this one was derived from the original technique, this one from Matt, and adapted from the videos from BI Elite, Parker Stevens, which was writing data from Power BI to SQL. So I adapted everything for Excel, and it totally works.
Well, that right there, buddy, sounds like it would be a topic. No, don't show it right now. Let's keep that one in the can. I think having a separate session on how to write back to SQL from Power BI.
From Excel to Power BI, because
well, there you go. Fair enough. So I think you got yourself a whole session there that people will sign up for. So let's don't give away everything all in the first one, man. Let's hold on. All right. So we've got lots of comments pouring in here that you've obviously you stimulated a lot of ideas and some great techniques there. And I got to tell you, bud, it's been fantastic to have you on the show. Really, really great stuff, and awesome to see how you've adapted some of the stuff I've done and come up with other stuff as well. So,
thanks again for having me.
Yeah, I just see a comment here from Nikos Del Papa about Oz with Oz's technique for referencing prior row. I'm thinking, correct me if I'm wrong with this one. The technique that I actually grabbed from Oz was about
indexes,
a VLOOKUP approximate match. It wasn't about.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess
totally
it did.
Right.
But
yeah, I think it was my confusion there, but I thought that this was the one with the two indexes columns is the one, but you're right, it's the approximate match.
Yeah, it was the approximate match one. And Nick, I know you've got the recipe card for that one, so you can always check out that. That's the exact pattern that we were looking at there. So, awesome, cool. Well, you know what? Again, but thanks for coming and doing this. I mean, I've wanted to get you on the show for a long time. I really appreciate the fact you did it. Great presentation, and
thank you very much.
We already know now that we got to have you back, so that's a good outcome.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Of course.
You are my mentor, and I was so honored to be invited by you. And thank you everyone who joined. And I hope that at least one of the tips and tricks that I showed is useful for any of you.
Awesome. All right. Well, unfortunately, I'm going to have to shut her down today because I got to run to another meeting today. But I promise for everyone, I will get this recording up within the next 48 hours. It'll be posted to the ScaleWave YouTube channel so that people can review and see the technical components of how Cristian pulled off these techniques. And outside of that, yeah, dude, I'll be in touch and we'll start working on your next session for us.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming, buddy.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one, folks. We'll see you next time.